Why holding on to more is hurting you, the Buddha's Guide to Freedom. Introduction. Welcome to Buddhist Motivation, where we explore the timeless teachings of Buddhism and how they can guide us to find peace, wisdom, and freedom in our everyday lives. Today, we'll dive deep into a powerful lesson from the Buddha about desire and how it keeps us trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. In a world where we're constantly told to chase after more money, more success, more approval, we often forget the key to true freedom lies in letting go of these attachments. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to embrace impermanence and find peace in accepting life as it is, rather than endlessly striving for what we don't have. Personally, I believe the title of today's video, Why Holding On to More is Hurting You, holds a profound truth. So often, we get caught up in the pursuit of things outside ourselves, forgetting that true happiness comes from within. The moment we release our attachments, we make room for peace to enter our lives. Before we dive into the story, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Your support motivates me to create more meaningful content, and I truly appreciate your involvement. One inner peace is not a destination, but a journey. Inner peace is not a final destination that you can reach once you've achieved enough in life. It is a long journey that you must take every day, in each moment. In Buddhism, the Buddha teaches that true peace is not the absence of conflict or suffering, but the ability to maintain a calm heart and a clear mind, no matter how turbulent the world around you may be. To truly understand this, we must realize that life is always in flux, and no one can control everything that happens. Inner peace comes from the ability to accept everything as it is, without judgment or resistance. We may feel exhausted by life's challenges, but it is precisely in those moments that true peace arises, when we stop trying to change the world, and instead, change how we perceive it. Buddhist story. Once, the Buddha met a man filled with anger and hatred in his heart. The man came to him seeking freedom from his rage. The Buddha smiled and said, "If you want to get rid of your anger, look within yourself. It is not an enemy outside of you, but within your own mind." The man began to understand that instead of seeking peace outside of himself, he needed to look within to uncover the true source of his emotions. Only when he stopped fighting his feelings could he find peace. Lesson: inner peace is about accepting and loving everything in life, whether it's challenges or joy. It comes from your heart, not from external circumstances. True acceptance of emotions and the impermanence of life. Suffering is an inescapable part of the human experience, yet it is not the suffering itself that defines us, but how we respond to it. In Buddhism, there is a profound teaching that everything in life is impermanent. This means that all things, from the joy we experience to the pain we endure, are subject to change. Nothing is forever. The moment we resist this natural truth, we set ourselves up for unnecessary pain. The more we fight against the changing nature of life, the more we amplify our suffering. We cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we choose to accept and respond to those changes. Buddhist story. There is a deeply touching story of a woman who came to the Buddha in a state of deep grief. She had just lost her beloved son, and the pain of his death consumed her. Her tears flowed freely as she sought solace, asking the Buddha how she could stop the unbearable suffering. In response, the Buddha calmly asked her, "Can you find a family where there is no loss, no sorrow?" The woman, looking bewildered, shook her head and replied, "No, there is no such family." The Buddha continued, "Sorrow is part of life. It is the nature of all things to come and go. When we understand this truth, we can begin to accept the impermanence of life. Loss, while painful, is not something to fear, but something to embrace as a part of the cycle of existence." In her moment of grief, this simple truth opened a doorway for her to begin letting go of her overwhelming pain. While she couldn't change the fact of her loss, she could change how she carried it. She began to understand that in accepting the impermanence of life, there was peace to be found. The pain would always be there, but it no longer had the power to consume her. Lesson: the key to peace lies not in denying or avoiding pain, but in accepting that pain, joy, and all other emotions are temporary. By embracing impermanence, we free ourselves from the clutches of the past and the anxiety of the future. We are no longer haunted by what we have lost, nor paralyzed by what we may lose. Instead, we are able to live fully in the present moment, appreciating each experience as it comes and letting go when it is time to move on. When we accept the ebb and flow of life, we find the freedom to truly live. In every moment of suffering, there is the potential for growth, for wisdom, and for peace. The challenge is not to avoid the pain, but to embrace it with the understanding that it, too, shall pass. 3. Compassion and loving kindness in facing suffering. Compassion is one of the most profound and transformative teachings in Buddhism, and it extends far beyond how we treat others. Often, we find it difficult to extend that same love and kindness to ourselves, especially during moments of suffering. When faced with pain, whether it's loss, failure, or self-doubt, we tend to be our harshest critics. We may feel unworthy of love or unable to forgive ourselves for past mistakes. But in truth, true healing begins with compassion for ourselves. The Buddha teaches that suffering is eased not by avoiding or rejecting our pain, but by embracing it with compassion. When we accept our flaws, our struggles, and our imperfections, just as we would for a dear friend or loved one, we begin to heal. This gentle approach to ourselves allows us to transcend guilt and shame and create space for love and growth. Buddhist story. There is a powerful story where a woman approached the Buddha, tears streaming down her face as she mourned the loss of her child. Her grief consumed her, and she asked the Buddha, "How can I stop the suffering that fills my heart?" The Buddha, seeing her pain, gently asked, "Can you love someone who is struggling, someone who is lost in their sorrow?" The woman, still weeping, replied, "Of course, I can love them." The Buddha then asked, "Can you love yourself, even when you are struggling? Can you accept your pain, just as you would for another person?" The woman paused, her heart heavy with the weight of her grief, and for the first time, she saw the profound truth in the Buddha's words. She realized that in her quest to find peace, she had been neglecting the most important person herself. Compassion, she understood, must first begin within. It was only by extending the same kindness, patience, and love to herself that she could truly begin to heal. Lesson: healing doesn't begin by blaming yourself or suppressing your emotions. It begins with compassion. You must love and accept yourself, flaws and all, before you can fully love and forgive others. We often think that compassion is something we give to others, but it is equally important to give it to ourselves. The more we show ourselves kindness and understanding, the more we are able to share that love with others. When you can hold space for your own pain without judgment, you create the foundation for real healing. Only then can you move through your suffering with grace, and find peace in your heart. So, next time you face difficulty, be gentle with yourself. Treat yourself with the same love and kindness you would offer a friend in need. In doing so, you'll unlock the power of compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. And that is where true healing begins. For mindfulness and observing the mind. In Buddhism, mindfulness is not just a practice, it is a way of life. It is the art of being present, of truly experiencing each moment without being swept away by the noise of our thoughts, emotions, or distractions. Mindfulness is the key to unlocking inner peace. When we live mindfully, we develop the ability to observe our thoughts and emotions without being ruled by them. We come to realize that our emotions are not us, they are simply passing experiences. Peace doesn't come from trying to eliminate these thoughts or feelings, but from the ability to acknowledge them, understand them, and let them flow without attaching ourselves to them. So often, we react impulsively to the thoughts that arise in our minds, whether they are thoughts of fear, anger, or sadness. These emotions then shape our reality, influencing our actions and relationships. But through mindfulness, we can create a space between ourselves and these emotions, and in that space, we find the power to choose how to respond. We are no longer slaves to our thoughts. Instead, we become the observers of them. Buddhist story. One day, a disciple approached the Buddha, deeply troubled by the constant anxiety that plagued his mind. "Master, how can I overcome the anxiety that fills my thoughts?" he asked, his voice filled with distress. The Buddha, always calm and serene, responded with a simple yet profound piece of wisdom. "When you feel sad, do not run away from the sadness. Look at it. Observe it, like a cloud passing through the sky. You do not need to hold on to it, simply recognize it and let it pass." The disciple, though still struggling, began to understand the truth in the Buddha's words. Instead of trying to fight or suppress his anxiety, he could simply watch it as it came and went, much like watching a cloud drifting by. This practice of mindfulness, observing without attachment, gradually allowed the disciple to experience peace. He didn't need to rid himself of the anxiety. He only needed to let it be, to watch it pass without being consumed by it. Lesson: true peace does not come from fighting our emotions or thoughts, but from learning to observe them without reacting. When we are mindful, we can step back and witness our feelings as they arise, understanding that they are temporary and not a permanent part of who we are. Mindfulness teaches us to live in the present moment, free from the grip of the past or the anxiety of the future. By observing our thoughts, we begin to understand where they come from and how they shape our reactions. In that space of observation, we find freedom. We no longer need to be controlled by our emotions, and we can choose to respond from a place of calm, understanding, and wisdom. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we can create a peaceful, centered mind, one that is unaffected by the chaos around us. Peace, in this way, becomes an inner experience, no longer dependent on the external world, but on how we relate to it. 5. Letting go of desire and accepting life as it is. In Buddhism, desire and craving are seen as the root causes of suffering. We live in a world that constantly encourages us to chase after more wealth, more success, more validation from others. But the truth is, no matter how much we attain, it is never enough. There is always a sense of lack, a feeling that we are missing something. This craving for more only deepens our dissatisfaction, keeping us on an endless treadmill of longing and unfulfillment. True peace, however, is found not in the accumulation of things, but in the release of attachment and the acceptance of life as it is. Letting go of desire is not about abandoning the good things in life, nor is it about rejecting the natural joys and blessings that come our way. Instead, it's about recognizing that these things like wealth, fame, or the approval of others are impermanent. We cannot hold on to them forever, and in trying to do so, we only create more suffering. The key is to enjoy what we have in the present moment, without clinging to it or fearing its loss. Buddhist story. The Buddha once shared a story about a wealthy man who had spent his entire life in the pursuit of riches. He amassed great wealth, built a vast empire, and became admired by all who knew him. However, when the man was on his deathbed, he realized something deeply profound. None of his wealth could follow him beyond death. All the treasures he had gathered were left behind. The Buddha said, "Wealth does not bring peace. When you let go of everything, when you relinquish your attachment to possessions, you will find true freedom." The man, on the brink of passing, understood that his pursuit of material wealth had never given him lasting happiness. The more he held on to, the less he was truly at peace. It was only in releasing that attachment, in accepting the impermanence of life and its fleeting pleasures, that he could find the freedom to die with a heart at ease. Lesson: letting go does not mean abandoning everything you love or desire. It means learning to accept life as it is and finding joy in what you already have. By releasing the need to cling to material things, we make space for deeper contentment and gratitude for the present moment. The Buddha's teaching is clear. True peace is found not in acquiring more, but in letting go of the constant desire for more. When we stop seeking fulfillment from the outside world, we discover that peace lies within us. We learn to accept that everything is temporary and that happiness comes from within, not from external circumstances. By embracing life as it is, impermanent, unpredictable, and ever-changing, we find the freedom to be at peace with what we have, right here, right now. Conclusion: I hope today's story has offered some insight into how we can release the grip of desire and begin to embrace life with gratitude and acceptance. The Buddha's wisdom still resonates in our modern lives, reminding us that peace is found when we stop chasing what we can't control. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Your feedback is a constant source of inspiration for me to create more content that can help us all grow. And stay tuned for the next video, because the journey toward deeper peace and understanding is just beginning, and I'm excited to have you along for the ride. See you in the next one.